but we just did that now. Now that, okay, I have to turn this up so they can hear.
But there is no such thing as time. There is just now.
There we go. All right, now I know Mary's coming by Zoom. But we have a quorum. And I can take notes. So let's see, we have the meeting notes, summary meeting notes being taken, I believe. Let me just double check that.
Later is really into their something by somethings. Got their 30 by 30, their 90 by 50.
All right, and Onward has signed in, and can you pass that page around? Well, everybody will get signed in, please. Thank you. Especially since I'm taking notes, I appreciate that. And okay. So I'm calling the meeting to order. I will note that the meeting notice said the meeting was going to be at the Putney Public Library, but indeed it's at Town Hall. I did post notes on the library at both doors saying that the meeting is here. But that does mean, I was told, that we can't take any action because it was not properly noticed. So we won't be able to make any motions to approve, but we can certainly talk about things and see if we achieve some understandings about what we want to do, and that would be fine. And I will introduce myself for the recording, and I will invite you each to be the same. There's some hope that the Zoom AI will actually differentiate your voice from mine. Otherwise, it will say Sue Coakley said. Sue Coakley will do. That's all it will say. And it would be really better if it wasn't just me. So this is a voice check. Sue Coakley, Chair of the Planning Commission.
Vanessa Long, Planning Commission.
Anand Fideli, Wyndham Regional Commission.
Phil Bannister, Planning Commission.
Andrew Morrison, Planning Commission.
Good. Welcome all. On the agenda for this evening, I'll review the agenda and go over the meeting packet. Are there any public comments and items not on the agenda?
Sorry, it went. Pip, that was Pip's pen that followed the sign.
Just the blue, yeah.
This is my pen.
Yeah, this one.
You stole it.
I did.
Thank you. You got a pen? If one Amber is the only child here that doesn't need a pen.
There's pens over there. I don't anticipate needing a pen.
There's lots of pens everywhere. Okay. So there are no public comment items not on the agenda. There are none. So I will review the rest of the agenda. We have draft meeting minutes. They were not noticed until yesterday, and so therefore we wouldn't be able to approve them, but they are useful potentially for a discussion. So I'll make sure you have them all. I will review the action items. We will we have our guests here, Anand Fideli from the Wyndham Regional Commission. Talk about a Putney Enhanced Energy Plan, what, why, and how we might do it with his help. Comprehensive Village Plan, the project schedule and advisory committee formation. Vanessa's done some work to get us ready to talk about forming the advisory committee and next steps. With that, I would like to visit a little discussion about a handout that I provided to you at last meeting about changes to the state village designation program and what that might mean for the comprehensive village plan. Some updates on that. Zoning bylaw modernization, we're just going to do a process check-in, schedule review, what we need to do. We do have in the packet at the very bottom the schedule and a chance to just talk about any adjustments we need to make before we wrap up the meeting tonight. And the next meetings are listed below. Any questions on the agenda? Comment, suggestions? Okay, in your packet, you will find the Tuesday, July 1st meeting minutes draft, the action item list. You will find the Planning Commission Chair monthly report for July that I gave. Then we have two things from Anand. We have a memo, municipal enhanced energy plans, what, why, and how, and then an overview about it and what that the presentation, what it is that Putney would likely need to do and assistance we might have for that. And then behind that, you will see a draft nomination form for the advisory committee for the comprehensive village plan. Behind that, an FAQ that might be distributed with that. And then the last document is the updated schedule for the zoning bylaw project. Any questions on materials? Everybody find everything? Okay, great. So you will find the meeting minutes that are draft. I won't ask for a motion to approve, but I will just point out my effort to summarize the conversation, what was presented, and some of the comments. It was a very involved meeting, so I wasn't able to get every comment, but it's a little bit more summary, but it does provide what was discussed, what was proposed, and some reflections on that. So take a look at that and we will approve, we will make a motion, we'll take a motion to approve that at our meeting on September 2nd. Any questions or comments about the minutes? All right, well, related to the minutes are some action items and you'll see the report. And most of these things are done. We're either done for the comprehensive village plan, the zoning bylaw, subdivision regulations. I did have some trouble trying to distribute redlined versions, but we'll talk about that later. Of the draft bylaws and subdivision regulations. And working with Wyndham, so under things that are underway is that we will provide comments on the draft bylaws and subdivision regulations by the 15th. We've changed that. You'll see in the schedule to the 18th. At another day, given some of the document challenges. I have had some discussions with Wyndham Regional about the criteria for selecting a map for the Forest Block Overlay District. That's something, again, we might touch on in terms of our schedule and process at that part of our meeting tonight. Focus group was held. We have some summaries already that we'll be working with Wyndham Regional on that. And so that's done. Still working on some of the outstanding meeting minutes. And I am tracking the Encore Energy 2 megawatt battery project, which has not yet been presented to the Public Utility Commission for certificate of public good. They've had some things going on, whatever. They have not hit that milestone yet. So we're not watching to see if Putney might be request to be an interested party in receiving this, but I am watching it. So that's the update. Any questions on the action item list? Okay. I will briefly call your attention to my monthly report to the select board. And it provides a summary of what we talked about at the July 1st meeting with a focus on the Forest Block Overlay District and our next steps. It does talk about the Putney Landing Walkway design and construction. PIP is actually currently working on an RFQ based on a selected contractors list the state has to find a design engineer.
You're waiting to create the committee.
Oh,
There's
Karen has okay, she told me she's all set. She didn't tell you. I told her to call you. And it has to be, okay. Let's make sure Karen knows. Let's just write a memo for her.
Yeah, I did outline those steps.
Yeah, you did.
We can review that at some point, but we need to document that a committee of at least 2 has
Yes.
reviewed contractor qualifications. And having done that, we then advise the state, so our project liaison.
Yes.
Whatever its official title is, and then the ball can get rolling. is my understanding.
Looks
So
like Mary.
it's in my last kind of memo about. So, we need to take action. If you think it's a planning commission action, I guess we're not gonna do it tonight. If it's just an in-house decision.
It's just an in-house
Two of us
decision.
raise our hand and form the committee that reads a couple of resumes, qualification statements from the list of pre-qualified contractors that the state has. That's the process. So we can talk about it more.
We can. Well, I just want to bring attention to that's moving forward, and I will welcome Mary. Hello, Mary. Can you hear us?
Yes, I'm able to hear you.
Very good. Okay. All right, and we can all see you, so that's good. So I'm just going over the Planning Commission Chair report briefly. We're talking about the Putney Landing Walkway Design and Construction. Just generally, the role that Pip and I are playing as that advisory committee to assist the town manager to move the project forward. It's really her lead, and there will be an engineer that will be doing the design. It is her choice, but we'll be advising her and just doing some of the work to advance it. There does need to be a project construction manager at some point, or oversight for the project, but that's later. And that's not the planning commission. Really, it is an administrative task for the town. We are assisting it because we developed a lot of the material for it, and Karen needs the help. So I don't expect to be involving the full commission in it. At least maybe not until there's public engagement. The comprehensive village plan, we'll talk more about that tonight. And enhanced energy plan, we'll talk about that. And then the very last page of this is a little schedule in Easter egg colors that show the projects, sort of the sequencing of projects that we're taking on. There are some additional projects that the town manager would like us to take on, and including developing a town recreation plan that is assigned to the planning commission in the town plan. So she's reviewing those things and will let us know what other things she would like us to do, and that would probably need to go to the select board. So we do have other work to do. And I'll just note that the select board still has not indicated in any way they want to move anything forward on housing beyond the comprehensive village plan and the zoning bylaw update. They did disband the town housing advisory committee. And it is really unclear what they want to have happen next. So I bring it to them every meeting and they don't say anything. So, other than they closed the committee. So, no, I just want to say that based on that, it says it in the report, I'm not moving anything forward to seek money for housing coordinator services or anything, because we serve at the pleasure of the select board and we don't have any clear direction. That's disappointing. Any items? Otherwise, that's the past items and review of reports. So enhanced energy plan. And somehow we're ahead of schedule.
Nothing wrong with that.
So I'll just begin by saying you and I have been talking about this since we began a conversation with you, because we've been doing talk about that in terms of energy policy planning, and looking at what towns need to do and how Wyndham Regional can help towns with what they need to do. Our town plan did not specifically call for enhanced energy plan, but what does talk about in the energy section is the need to be able to identify potential sites to site facilities that would go before the Public Utility Commission for siting. And we've had two, and they've been different. One was a solar and the other was a battery project. And so one requires a town support, the solar project did, but the battery project did not. It just goes for a certificate of public good. They did do a briefing for us. We did get to learn about it. And they invited us to ask any questions, and I just reported that they have not filed for a certificate of public good. They were going to do that in May, then they were going to do it in July. They haven't done it yet. So that's on hold. But in looking at that, it is clear that our town plan wants us to have some type of policy in place. And I think the outcome that we want is if in a proceeding at the Public Utility Commission for a facility seeking a certificate of public good, we would like Putney to be able to have standing in that proceeding so that our policies and desires would be important. And an enhanced energy plan will do that. And I'm going to let Anand talk about that, but that is one of the big reasons for us to go forward with this. And as you'll hear, it's possible for us to work from materials that have already been done that Anand's look at, both our town plan and a 2021 effort at writing it, or 22 effort.
When I saw this on today's agenda, my first thought was actually, thought we did that already.
It never got finished.
So it never got finished.
So it was handed to me when I became chair, but
Robin was working on it.
he was, but he handed it to
Okay.
me and said he was done with the energy committee and doing that. And I said, well, we'll finish the town plan and then figure out what to do with it. And so this is my now trying to figure out what we do.
Okay.
So it is a continuum with a pause in between, and there have been new requirements. So that, and in some ways they work better for us. So we'll hear about that. So I invited Anand to tell us about that. He has this memo that provides a good background on what this is now, and then further look at what this might mean for Putney.
Thank you, sir.
So there you go.
You want to put up slides on
I can.
the screen? You don't have to do that.
Well,
I mean,
it's not hard to do. I have them ready.
Okay.
They were ready when I let you know. I got to pull them up again.
yeah, that's a great introduction, Sue. And one other thing I'll add too is I think part of the reason this plan, this topic kind of came up with like a renewed focus was in part due to conversations that I think we're coming out of and are still coming out of the zoning bylaw harmonization project. And this question of, okay, what tools do towns have from like a land use regulation perspective to have a say in how energy generation and transmission facilities are sited locally. And in some ways, you would think zoning plays a role there. But the short answer is that it doesn't, and the enhanced energy plan is the mechanism through which you can kind of regulate the intersection of land use and energy infrastructure. So we can talk a little bit more specifically about what that means in a second here. But first of all, thank you all for having me. My name is Anand. I'm an assistant planner at Putney Regional Commission. So there's a memo in front of you. I don't want to repeat information that you may have already looked at or are looking at now, but I wanted to start by kind of just giving a brief overview of what this type of plan, these enhanced energy plans, what they are, what they achieve, what work is entailed kind of, at a high level. And I don't want to talk at you for too long, so happy to kind of answer questions throughout it and have this be a conversation as well. So as I kind of already mentioned, enhanced energy plans, right? They look at this intersection of land use and energy planning. It's an entirely a voluntary optional plan. There's no penalty for not having an enhanced energy plan. And if you choose to go for this type of document, the local policies in that plan receive what's defined in the statute is substantial deference in Public Utility Commission um, uh, permitting processes, and the role that regional planning commissions like WRC play in that effort is we're actually required by statute to provide technical resources to all towns in the region, whether or not they choose to develop an enhanced energy plan. So we have a lot of background information that's necessary to kind of support this effort. Again, if you choose not to adopt this type of plan, there's no penalty. Your policies still continue to receive due consideration in Public Utility Commission. It's Section 248 hearings. But this distinction between due consideration, substantial deference is kind of simultaneously murky, but also important to kind of highlight because I think it gets to the crux of why you even do this plan to begin with. I'll get into the work that's involved. It is, I would say, a fairly moderate lift. So obviously you want to know why you're doing it.
What's the benefit?
Right.
And I'll just point out that
Yeah.
John did a great job in his memo of digging up a definition of substantial deference.
Yeah.
I used to be a Public Utility Commission staff person. I used to write stuff like this. So I was very interested to know what this was because I think it helps us get our head around what and why.
And this is a relatively new framework. It was introduced in 2016, I want to say. So there are given that there isn't there is some precedent for seeing how these types of plans play out, but this is that kind of gets to the crux of the reason to do this. So thank you. Due consideration, I'll kind of touch briefly on this, and you can read those quotes there and repeat them. But due consideration is a status that it is not defined in statute, and precedent seems to suggest that the Public Utility Commission will look at your policies in your town plan, they'll look at the policies in a regional plan, and will kind of only consider them, or only maybe not consider them, but they are taken into consideration, particularly when there's a project that will interfere with orderly development of the region. Substantial deference is kind of a more well-defined term. It's laid out in Act 174, which is the enabling legislation for these types of plans and this planning framework. And it basically says that the land use policy in your enhanced energy plan will be applied in pretty much all situations unless there's a considerable state interest in overriding that policy. So there is a pretty clear, I would say, tangible benefit laid out in statute to get this substantial deference status. It matters more or less for certain towns, right?
Could you,
Yeah.
sorry to interrupt, could you give maybe a concrete example of the difference between the two and how that might actually concretely impact development in different ways?
Definitely. So, for example, in a town plan that doesn't have an enhanced energy element, for example, you'll receive a due consideration status. And, let's say there is some sort of provision in the town plan that says, hey, we want to put a certain buffer on wind turbines, for example. The Public Utility Commission will likely not consider that in their review of a project proposal, of a wind project proposal. The substantial deference status basically unlocks your ability as a town to have, I would say, zoning-like regulations that relate to energy projects that have teeth, that have regulatory authority over development. So you would, for example, be able to put a buffer in that will have an impact on how wind gets developed.
So I'll give you an example for Putney.
Yeah.
So one is going to be Putney Mountain. Well, one could think about putting windmills up there. Our town plan talks about that as not a suitable location, partly because of so much conservation land there that is being preserved, but also because it's a long way to get the power to, substation. And so it could be that you could put the windmill up, but the thing of getting the wires, to where they need to go could be too disruptive to all of it. So that's one thing. The other is that
But if we didn't have the enhanced energy plan, the Public Utility Commission could say, we see that you have talked about this, but this public good seems to be more important, so.
that's right. They
Gonna
can,
give
yeah, it gives a greater weight if we have the preferred energy plan. They'll just give it greater weight. They'll actually take that as policy, not as, oh, we'll look at it, we'll think about it.
Right.
They have to have a reason not to do it.
Right, okay.
The other example is down Great Meadows area, the whole river, that's a corridor for power. There's, high voltage power going through there. There's a substation down by High Liberty Road. It's a good place to do energy projects because you don't have to go very far to get into the transmission system. So I would expect that we're going to have some more pressure, but we have prime agricultural land there. And it's next to a forest block. So there are some considerations about that. The harder thing is to identify sites where you might want to, where it would be appropriate to put those things. But that would be the best thing to do in the preferred energy plan, is to have some guidance about what is appropriate versus what is just not appropriate. So got to do both.
Yeah, having both prongs, and there are different approaches to that specific topic of, okay, how do you identify preferred sites? Obviously, that gets into I would say somewhat controversial territory as to where you would want to direct energy projects, and there's a lot to unpack there. And that would be, if you wanted to go through this type of project, the original commission would assist in helping you identify those areas. We can help map them and also help with, for example, like outreach to landowners, right? You are very much allowed to, in this process, send letters to landowners and say, hey, would you be interested in having your property be a preferred site? It doesn't necessarily mean, someone's going to build solar on your property, but it puts you in this a more favorable category, I would say, or saying that you're more favorable that you might, prefer to have that be a possibility. So yeah, I can kind of touch briefly on that's the benefit, the requirements, and these are outlined pretty specifically in statute. So this has to be a locally adopted, and actually this is kind of a recent change to these standards. It has to be a regionally approved plan. There used to be a mechanism by which towns could submit enhanced energy plans directly to the state for a determination of compliance is the word, is the phrase that the state likes to use. It's now shifted to you submit the plan to your regional planning commission, they approve it, and then aside from that, there are three kind of categories of standards.
Insect transport services.
Yeah.
This is the important work.
Yeah. There's three like major categories of tasks or standards that need to be met. In the plan, you need to include some data analysis, targets that are kind of based on state climate modeling data that is then disaggregated and informs certain energy benchmarks, like number of heat pump installations, number of weatherizations, etc. you need to include certain pathways, which are basically just policy categories. There's a new one that's been added that focuses on equity, which is kind of part of the recent 2022 change. And you need to include resource potential maps, which indicate areas that can support solar or wind development. And this type of plan can be adopted as a standalone element, standalone plan, or can be incorporated into the town plan more fully as an element. So I would imagine if Putney were to go for this type of document, it would be a standalone.
But it may well reference the town plan because it talks about these issues, but it doesn't provide the whole package of what's needed for an enhancement.
I'll just touch briefly on this slide because it kind of relates to the last one, but the requirements are itemized in a checklist. They're called the determination standards, and it's those three like bundles of tasks that I just mentioned, broken out into more kind of like specific requirements that need to be met. Again, these are more specific involved than those kind of required for municipal plans more broadly, Vermont. And this doesn't exactly pertain to Putney because again, this is not going to be, again, if you were to go for it, part of your town plan, but it's important that the policies in the enhanced energy plan are consistent with plan policies in other chapters of the town plan. There's a great deal of overlap, for example, between like energy and transportation, energy and land use, the kind of areas of the enhanced energy plan that address those topics need to be they need to comport with the policies in the town, the chapters that they relate to in the town plan. So I can kind of drill down a little bit more specifically to Putney and talk about the kind of foundation that you have to work from as far as if you wanted to follow through and some work that was conducted in previous instances, how much would be required in addition to what's already been done to get to a finalized and compliant, statutorily compliant state in 2020, well, I guess 2026. So Sue shared with me that draft enhanced energy plan, which is actually a pretty fantastic basis on which to kind of build. It hits many of the marks. It has much of the needed content. I believe it's based on an older template that WRC put together a few years ago when the standard or when this framework was originally introduced. So it has a lot of the skeleton already in place. What would need to be updated from that document would be the data analysis, the modeling information, the targets, the maps would also need to be updated, and obviously would be an opportunity to. I doubt there are inconsistencies between that draft and the energy chapter and the Putney Town Plan, 2023 Town Plan, but it would be an opportunity to kind of revisit the narrative and make sure all of that is consistent with what's in the town plan. The town plan is obviously more updated. Some of the data is there, and it does a really great job of. I reread it today. It does a great job of tackling a lot in a little amount of text, which I'll fully admit, as far as like the enhanced energy plan framework, the length of these documents is an area for improvement. I would say is they can, they can be. They can be a bit much.
Thinking like what happened to our stream regs,
Yeah,
thanks to state policy.
right, yeah,
They go from being like
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the 21, draft is fairly extensive.
Yeah.
It's dense. And yeah, I think that Rob Francis did a great job of putting together a really clear succinct statement. And I think, starting from there and then figuring out what we can pull from the 21 plan, it's still useful.
Yeah.
But the more recent document is sort of the one that's the current policy.
Sure.
But there's a lot that aligns between the two. It's not a big difference, just
Yeah.
a lot more detail in the draft, the 21 draft.
Right. And some of that detail is necessary to include, but I think one of the pitfalls I've been slowly kind of working on more and more of these recently. A pitfall that kind of often comes up with these is the standards do require a level of kind of like depth of data analysis, and it's very easy to get so far into the weeds that you've lost everyone. And I think there's value in an enhanced energy plan being kind of a technical document, being a technical guide, but there's a very fine. So
Yeah.
I would say in general, with the existing work that has been done and the existing documents that you have, you could create an enhanced energy element that combines the two of them with not a unreasonable amount of work. I hesitate to give a number of months that would be required for a project like this, but you're in a pretty good spot, all things considered. So I can kind of also talk a little bit about the precise things that will get you the rest of the way. So as I alluded to, the data all needs to be updated with kind of 2023 sources, which when your regional commission provides to you, this could be as simple as plugging in the data, right? That would not require much work at all. I think there is some contextual info around it that's helpful to include. For example, like a lot of the analysis that's required to be in this document is based on American Community Survey data, and those estimates have large margins of error. So it's important to kind of demonstrate in the plan, like, hey, these are planning tools. These are like important figures to include, but they aren't perfect. So,
Their estimates, right?
Yeah. Targets that are based on updated climate modeling data, and that refers to the state every time it updates its climate action plan. They contract with, I believe it's Stockholm Environmental Institute. They contract with this company to create different scenarios for how Vermont could meet its climate and energy goals. So the targets for municipal and regional enhanced energy plans usually get updated every time that the cap gets updated. Resource maps, similarly, there's a list of statewide areas that the PUC uses to inform its decision making, which identifies natural resource areas like deer wintering habitats, forest blocks, primary agricultural soils. These are all areas that are generally considered unsuitable for development. That list gets updated however many years or so, and as a result, the maps that portray those areas, or I guess portray the inverse, which is areas that are suitable for development, those need to be updated. I think it's especially important to include siting standards that are useful to the Public Utility Commission, clear articulations of locally preferred sites, areas where there are locally identified constraints, and any and all like guidelines for development. This is the kind of zoning like language I was talking about earlier. You can not include that and still get the thumbs up of like, hey, it's an enhanced energy plan. And quite frankly, I think it's a not great way to go about it. That having the citing standards is the way that you give this document teeth, regulatory teeth. Policies, I believe the draft enhanced energy element hits on most of these, but there is a new energy equity, environmental justice standard that has been added, and I can talk more about what that looks like if you're interested. And so, in sum, I would say the bulk of the work that would be needed would be updating technical info, helping craft PUC relevant language, and bringing together these two documents in terms of narrative cohesion.
And I will add that I think our housing needs assessment and strategy actually adds to the pathways, especially addressing the equity issue. We finished that, and we have recommendations now pending for select board thumbs up to move anything forward. But I went back and read the energy section recently, and I looked at the housing recommendation. And went, oh, yeah, we nailed it. We really, in terms of existing homes, which is where most of the energy efficiency improvements have to be made, with attention to those who can have difficulty affording housing. So, which turns out to be much of the town.
Yeah.
So
Great.
Anyway, there are other things that we can use as content for pathways.
Right.
Clarifying questions.
Yeah.
These energy targets that get laid out by us as a town, presumably following state guidance. If your town doesn't have an enhanced energy plan, I imagine there are still state energy targets that have been laid out. Having an enhanced energy plan, does that somehow make us as a town more responsible for achieving those targets than we would be otherwise? And does failure to achieve those targets, could that have consequences like losing approval of our enhanced energy plan?
Great question. And no, not at all. The targets are very much they're not requirements. They are very much a planning tool.
Okay.
And they ask the question of if Vermont is to meet its 90 by 50 goals, what amount of progress in key sector areas need to be made in order to meet those goals? And if we were to disaggregate those targets to towns, what would that look like for Putney, for example?
Okay.
That's kind of it gets into dicey territory because you'll see these targets. I mean, for example, for our region, we have something like, like 22,000 heat pump installations required by 2050. And so when you break that out town by town, there's sticker shock associated with like, oh my God, we're right as a town.
Yeah.
There's like, how are we going to do this, right? It's
Well,
not.
We have a goal
Right.
in our town plan that was adopted,
Sure.
5 years before that. 90% of homes will be weatherized, is what it says,
Right.
by 2050. And we are not anywhere near that. I think
And we had substantial conversation
right.
about like, how would you, like, what mechanisms do we even have
Right.
to move the needle on that?
Well,
right?
and I think our housing study, the Housing Coordination Services, was really targeted at removing the barriers to why
Sure.
people don't do it.
Yeah.
So, I think if we can, one, get support to actually implement things like that versus just have good ideas. And also, it is also helpful to know how can you measure progress really, right? And it's one thing to have the state goals and break them down and distribute them, and they might look more or less right or not, but more importantly, like, how do we track progress? So I would hope that a preferred energy plan would give us some metrics and ways that we could track progress, and how could that be supported by Wyndham Regional Commission and the state? Because why should every town have its own method, right?
This is an area that I feel like I've personally observed some. There's a hole, right? The tracking and monitoring and the follow through is not baked into this. Efficiency Vermont does
Their own.
does a great job of tracking certain project information, through their programs. And that's something that's data that would be included in the plan, and you can use that as a way to track progress over time for sure. But it's not necessarily, this is through Efficiency Vermont's
Right.
programs. So it's a lens, it's maybe not as comprehensive. And there are so many factors at play. There's workforce limitations in Vermont, right? There are tons of other
Barriers.
barriers.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's okay to recognize those as a town and say, hey, we don't necessarily have control over
Well,
those.
but we also came up with a plan to address them. And so the question is, if we were making progress, how would we know? That would be something, I mean, we won't bog down on that now, but I think for it to be a useful tool worth spending town time on, not only is it aspirational, but what gives it, any reality in terms of making progress. So one, pathways, but two is tracking
Yeah.
the progress you're making. So anyway, that may not be required, as you said, it's not what they would, but it doesn't hurt for us as a town to have an idea of how we would know that we're
So-
making a difference.
I have a follow-up question on that, which is
Yeah.
related to the like, is this worth the town time to put into,
Mhm.
running this thing to the finish line?
Good question.
Which is, what are the criteria that the Public Utility Commission is utilizing for their siting? Because if they're utilizing like A&R forest block data, and they're utilizing prime ag soils, and they're utilizing, preference towards brownfields and things like that, are there key elements that we as a town, like if a lot of those big picture things that are important to Putney are baked into what the Public Utility Commission is already looking at, do we have a sense as a town that there are things that we would be adding to that or not?
Mhm.
And if we're not going to be substantially adding to that, then
Seems
Do
like
we
it's also
put in,
a protective measure, and in a certain sense, a protective measure for the planning that we have been doing and are doing. So that we can, I guess, assert, yes, the state is doing their job, the Public Utility Commission is doing their job and citing all that. But this is a way of saying, this is what's important for us too, and making sure that it doesn't get swept aside. Especially when it comes to things like resource conservation.
And I will say administrations change.
Especially
It happens.
national,
Sometimes I
We know-
know it really doesn't ever happen, really.
there's
but-
no national level of support.
Yeah.
Most of the elements in here. So I was going to try to make the point that there are maybe two a distinction to be made between those aspects of the plan that are directed toward the utility commission's review of proposed energy projects in Putney, which could be of significant current concern to the planning commission and to the locals. And that would be a great benefit, I think, to have that substantial deference status there. The other aspects of the plan, the quantification of needs, the expectations to set thresholds, targets, etc., was controversial in the first go round, is my memory of it, that it was built on a number of assumptions that weren't shared by all the people in Putney, nor shared by the select board. This assumption that there's a very significant and dramatic need to do a wholesale change to the way we've been approaching our energy consumption, since 1880. And that's clearly not shared on a national level at the moment. And it was from a point of view that was somewhat on the more radical side of the energy sensibilities, so that it was suggesting that the town of Putney take municipal actions that would be very progressive in achieving those goals. And I don't think it would have gotten select board support without a big fight. So it was trying to find some balance there.
Can I put some concrete examples to this? So I think one of the concrete examples was the energy plan looked to electrification as the solution to Putney's current and future energy needs. The energy plan made almost no mention of the fact that firewood could be utilized to heat homes, right? And so that was the sort of like, hey, let's not put all of our eggs in this one basket. Like, is this really the sole way that we're going to meet these goals that we've set out? Or are there other tools at our disposal? Are there other resources at our disposal that we've been using for centuries that are within our community that could help achieve some of these targets around shifting? There's a big target to shift away from fuel oil, which is the majority of how heating is done for homes in our community. It's also the least energy efficient way to heat homes in our community. But the notion that everything was going to shift to electrification as the grand solution.
Yes, I totally agree with you. I just was trying to make this bigger point that I think we could sort of, I imagine a path that de-emphasizes some of the more progressive targets, all of which would be admirable, but very challenging because it would take propaganda effort to convince some of the members of the community and some members of the select board that they're important enough to commit to. But do what is needed to achieve an approved energy plan, but really focus on the geographic siting elements that could be quite important. And we haven't had that conversation here in town. Are there areas in town that could support more solar? I think the wind question has been taken off the table, at least by Rod and company, that there just wasn't our planner for the town plan, that there wasn't adequate wind on Putney Mountain, and it would never really be a viable issue.
You just couldn't get power anywhere, even if you could harvest
Yeah,
it.
but nevertheless,
Yeah.
to stay very strong would be great. So, and what I wanted to get to was if you could go to the next slide and try to put some percentage to how much of the work gets done by WRC and how much of the work gets done by Planning Commission.
Okay, so this work on this one.
Yeah.
But I just want to say that the town plan did actually try to create more of a balance in terms of our energy sources in town that are considered, desirable. We did actually address that. So that flexibility in the most recent document provides a broader view.
Yeah, those more Andrews taken.
Yeah,
Mine was sort of a politics of the enhanced energy plan as it was presented by the committee that.
The energy committee,
Would have been, it would have been difficult to get
Yes.
that policy, that document approved.
Yes.
So I'm just suggesting, a softer touch in those areas
Yeah.
that carry with it the suggestion of mandates to the highway department,
Yeah.
mandates to the town of Putney for, how we're
Right.
dealing with our structures, et cetera. But, strong language about the siting requirements and the location.
And I'll just say, as we talk about what Winter Regional Commission support could be, a question, and what we all want to talk about, I envision that when we do this, we actually use our project advisory committee process for that as well, so that we have different perspectives at the table as this is being prepared. Because I think that's how you get something that is more reflective of what's really appropriate in town. So anyway, I would recommend that when we get to it next spring, not now, that we consider an advisory committee to help us strike the balance on it. So, but what could Wyndham Regional Commission do?
So The approach that I've been taking recently with towns that are interested in this type of plan is that WRC will support the bulk of the work necessary to check the boxes to and that sounds like the bare minimum, but I assure you that these are pretty lengthy and involved standards. So again, that includes providing data outputs, any necessary methodological information, outlining the energy targets, explaining relevance, giving context to the modeling data. We also are willing to help kind of develop targets that may be more representative of the reality of for example, how folks heat their homes with wood in Putney. The state climate modeling data, it speaks to what you were saying, and it has a strong preference for electrification and shows wood heat energy diminishing over time, which is not it is not necessarily the path forward for Putney, for this region, I would say, in a lot of respects. So we can assist with developing, like a custom target for wood heat, for example. We'll obviously assist with mapping. I've been working with Jeff Nugent at our office recently to kind of get updated uh, preferred siting maps and solar/wind resource maps available, and we'll also suggest an approach for addressing any of the kind of changes to the planning framework, specifically the equity component. It sounds like, Sue, as you mentioned, there are already some ways in which the town is meeting that standard
Or proposing.
or proposing to meet that
We could
standard.
use a little more approval in the select board to do those things.
Sure. So we can help you get the rest of the way there. I think where the work of this group comes into play, and other town groups, identifying those preferred sites and getting to the nitty gritty of, okay, what are specific areas of town that you want to encourage renewable energy development? Or do those places exist? How do you go about identifying those and including them in the plan? And we'll also assist in mapping those areas at all possible. We can also definitely help out with the regulatory language, which I think would be important to include. So, it would be a collaborative process, but as far as the work required to get at least the bare minimum for approval, WRC can certainly help.
With that.
Yeah.
And to try to put it together into something comprehensible, would WRC be helping with document management? We have to create a document.
Sure.
Right? And so that is often the place where all of this comes together.
Yeah.
In a useful framework. So I think it would be good to clarify that you could help us prepare the document. I think we can do some of the writing and developing, but I think the whole thing of pulling it together, it helps from somebody who understands all the requirements, checking the boxes, to put it together in a useful framework.
Sure.
And I imagine that you'll be thinking about that for other towns. So it's not like it's a rubber stamp, but there's going to be an approach that
Sure.
you can take to it that works for the public. Hey, standard approaches work. I don't have any trouble with that.
Yeah.
So-
I have been advocating to Chris for me to be able to create that approach,
Okay.
and that's what I want to do for this.
Okay.
So
Well, you can say that at least. Well, we can talk about whether we all think that, but I think that it would be very helpful to have that type of assistance.
Yeah.
Does anybody else need more? I was in at the very beginning of the
Yeah.
very first presentation. You were in high school, and I don't know, back in grade school. It was
16, 15, 16.
Yeah.
Yeah, and, so I kind of get the big picture. I was there when the Energy Committee provided the report, sort of get it. So I know that there are a lot of details that have changed, but I'm wondering whether, because we can't take any action, can we do sort of a straw poll tonight about sentiment of the
Yes.
planning commission? So I think it's a great idea and we should move forward.
Yes.
I mean, I don't plan to be here for it. But I think it's something Putney should
Great idea
pursue.
that you guys should do.
Putney should pursue.
It's all right, you've been clear about that, Andrew, for a long time. There's nothing new in that.
Nothing new in that.
Tessa, and then I'll come to Mary and see what she says.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea. I'm sensitive to what you were brought up regarding the political realities of getting a plan passed and considering, realistic targets and strategies and trying to make sure that we're considering, different community needs and input as far as that goes. I'm also interested in learning more about the new equity guidelines. I don't know much about those, so we don't have to talk about those now. I'm sure it'll come up. So that's a long answer to say, yes, I think it's a good idea.
Thank you. And Mary, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm in agreement. I think that having the substantial deference definition associated with Putney is something that will allow Putney to make better decisions for themselves when it comes to public utilities. So again, to kind of reiterate what others have said already, the politics of it will be a whole different thing, but I think that we should move forward with at least attempting to address some of this.
If I can make one
Yes.
last statement, I mean, it seems to me at the moment, like, is there a way that we could plug some small elements of what we as a planning commission are tasked with here in terms of preferred sites? Seems to kind of dovetail with the notion of a comprehensive plan.
Yeah.
A comprehensive
Village plan?
village?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's at least could address one, like, while we're doing other village
So,
planning.
for example, I think if I could just
Yeah.
give an example of what I think you're saying, is that some of the solar siting we could be doing is on village. Is that what you're thinking about?
Well,
In
or
the
just
village?
like we could start, rather than take the notion of preferred sites. I think our town plan, to my recollection, talks more about sites we don't think are appropriate for development,
That is correct.
but does not
mention River Road.
It does, yes,
Yeah.
Yeah.
as the likely,
as the likely, yeah.
Soft reference to.
yeah, but keep going.
But if,
You're
but
right.
if we have a task ahead of us, it seems like the larger lift that we have ahead of us come next year will be running the process to start developing a set of preferred sites.
Right, and
That is going to require more outreach and input from the community that the planning commission is going to have to generate, then identifying local constraints or siting guidelines, which feels like that has been articulated somewhat in our existing town plan. So what I was suggesting was that we start, rather than try to take that on as a singular task, we could start taking it on in little nibbles as we do other things.
do other,
like-
how does other work contribute
Yeah.
to this? And I think,
And I think that's kind of laid out in the timeline that Sue gave us here, where we really get through the comprehensive village plan project first.
What I'm suggesting is
Yeah.
that as part of the comprehensive village plan project, we could address a piece of preferred siting by baking it into that planning process. And while we're going through that planning process, ask amongst the other questions we're asking, are there preferred energy generation sites that may
In the
occur
village. Yeah.
And then that is done, And when we move on to the
Right.
next,
Yeah.
Well, how much beyond the constraints of the designated village have you expanded the comprehensive village plan?
Not very far. I mean, the comment I would just make, Andrew, is that, we're talking about utility grade siting of renewables. So this would
yeah,
be
okay.
like the 2 megawatt energy storage facility.
Yeah,
These are bigger things because the smaller distributed renewables, it doesn't need a certificate of public good at the Public Utility Commission. At the Public Utility Commission, these are utility grade.
these are utility grade.
So that's why I'm
Yeah,
maybe the pushback on the village. I still think it's a good idea to talk about how the village, comprehensive village plan can actually support our journey towards, a cleaner energy that's distributed and equitable for everybody. And it begins with energy efficiency in my book, but, there's
But it's an opportunity to look at those things. to
Yeah,
look at
you can look at it,
segments,
why
and
not?
to also be assertive about the language and.
Right.
that
You mean within
through
the context of the consultant's work on the comprehensive village plan? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, that it's.
Yeah, I got it.
Asking the question or keeping.
Yeah,
it in
I
there.
guess
It's not bad.
to me, that consultant's work is going to be defined a lot by the geographic constraints that you're
Yes.
providing that consultant with,
Yeah.
how far afield.
Yeah,
it really is.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm reading this identified preferred sites as a planning commission task, but one that WRC would collaborate with.
That's right.
So I would imagine that, in the year to come, there'll be the development of some criteria that we can begin to create a framework for public discussion
Yes.
about what might be needed.
Yes. And I would say, when the regional commission is doing your regional land use plan, which is going to identify, among other things, where expansions of the village and neighborhood development area could be. Are you also, do you know, and I'm going to say probably not, because I think it's too much of a hot potato, identifying areas where siting of renewable energy resources might occur. But that would, it's another land use issue. I mean, this is a land use issue.
Yeah.
So I
And
just don't.
Putney, I mean, I guess I brought this up because Putney has proved to be, have no shortage of strong opinions when you bring up land use issues. Sure.
Right.
Right.
So we seem to not have any pushback at all on either the energy storage facility, or not that we had to do anything about it. We were mainly being informed. We didn't take any action.
I mean, that, right.
Um,
But if
but we
you
did
were
for
to
the-
plan ahead and say,
Yeah.
where are we going to put these
Yeah.
things? I'm sure
Yeah.
that we would get
I think there would be,
strong,
yes, there could be
Opinions.
strong opinions.
there could be strong opinions.
Yeah.
That's
But
going to be the
I
hard
think that
thing.
process, I mean, that would be it'd be a great process, and I would hope that if we say yes to this, that we're gonna get WRC assistance in developing up what the issues are.
I hear a trend in this.
So, we, as citizen planners, we
Sure.
can go into this with some professional help to,
Yeah.
That
try to
would be
figure out
great.
what's.
And I'm going to agree with you, Andrew, that we should always look to our projects to contribute towards goals like that.
Fair enough.
It's a good point. So great. I think we've
Yeah.
done what we needed to do on this tonight, unless there's any other question that anybody has about this. I'll just say one more thing about what I think our next step would be, but if our conversation about this is complete, and even if you're not going to be here, Andrew, and we take on this really wonderful work.
Can be part of the
It's-
advisory committee.
Yeah, that's one way.
Yeah, what would the next step?
The next step,
Because can we coast for a while we give the green light to WRC?
we can't give, so I talked to Karen about this. And she said, so are you gonna sign up for something tonight? I said, well, I think we probably need to have select board support for getting Wyndham Regional. So I think you probably want that. In the end, the plan has to be supported by the select board. I mean, that's what we read, right? It has to be locally adopted. I think that would not be us. I think that would be the select board. So we might recommend the select board adoption. That would be what I'd recommend that we do. But they adopt it. So they probably have to request the technical assistance from Wyndham Regional Commission, and that's what we have to work towards. What I would suggest as a next step, and if you could come back to us,
Mhm.
I want to say that this group thinks it's a good idea to address this issue, and we welcome Wyndham Regional Commission help. Could you give us kind of a technical assistance proposal
So,
that we could then discuss with you, and then once we think it reflects what we think is appropriate for the town, we can bring it to the select board.
With a letter of support from this.
Yeah, from this commission,
Yeah.
actually, yeah.
Yeah.
And that we would recommend that it be undertaken with reference to our town plan requirements and recent activity in the town. And so that would be great. And I think
Yeah.
this idea about document development,
definitely.
I think that would be an important part of it. But why don't you've got our interest, strong interest in recommending this to the select board, and I think having a technical assistance proposal to give to the select board would be great. And I
Yeah.
think you've developed some great materials. I really like this memo that you put together about the what and why, and so
Yeah,
we can talk
definitely.
about what that would include.
Yeah, I can definitely do that. And yeah, in the meantime, if there are conversations that come up again with the village comprehensive project or plan, and uh, I think all of these issues are interrelated as you know of observed. So yeah, happy to answer questions in the meantime. The final slide has, if you care to dig around in data, I can't imagine anyone would want to, because it kind of gives even
You underestimate this group.
Yeah.
if you want to play around with numbers, there are tons of numbers there
Yeah.
you can play around
Yeah,
with.
no,
It makes
this is
my head
good.
hurt, and I've been looking at this for a while. So, but yeah, feel free to dive into those resources. And
Yeah.
yeah, so I'll be in touch with you about putting together a proposal. And,
I love this one at the bottom, Northwest Regional Planning Commission. I worked with them
Yeah.
on quite a lot of things, and they did amazing work. Tom Ekman was their senior planner. Do you know Tom? He really set the bar for the country about how to do regional energy planning. I mean,
Yeah.
it was the gold standard, but he did it so well, and he was such a great presenter.
Yeah.
I talk about inventing of infographics. I never saw anybody who could do such a good job of taking complex modeling and presenting in a way that you all just went,
Yeah.
get it. Just, yeah. So anyway, that's great. Thank you so much for
thanks
your
for having
time
us.
and
Thank you.
offer. I think this is good, and you can see that our time frame for starting this, as you said, would be next spring, because we have a lot of work that we've already committed to, and
Yeah, and especially too in recognizing that, like I want to emphasize, yeah, WRC's willingness to support a large capacity. Yeah, it's a busy group, so yeah, we're here to support. But
Okay.
yeah, thank you
thank
all.
you so much. You're welcome to stay for the rest of our meeting, but not necessary.
I might not, but
Okay. Great. I'm gonna stop sharing this. Great. I'm glad that nobody else has joined us during the sharing of the document. But they did, I didn't notice them.
Right. I waited long enough for them, but
Yeah. All right, our next, do we need breaks? Everybody just keep going? We've got another 15 minutes.
Nice to see you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Anand. This was very well done.
Good night, folks.
Good night.
Bye.
So our next project is the comprehensive village plan. And Vanessa's been working on this, and just I'll introduce it at a high level. We signed the grant agreement in June. We are undertaking the zoning bylaw project. If you look at the memo that I gave to you from my report to the planning commission, the last page of it has the schedule of multiple projects. the idea is that the comprehensive village plan is beginning in August, only in that we're talking tonight about forming the advisory committee, project committee, to begin this fall, late this fall, so that we can review an RFP, so that by March, we have a consultant ready to work with us and get rolling in March. So that's that big overall schedule. And delaying it until that time, there's two reasons that's important. One is because we need to finish the zoning project, and that is a lot of effort. And secondly, that when the regional commission will finish their regional land use plan, which they're now undertaking, and they're going to be doing this fall. I did have a chance to talk with Matt Beckler. I was at Winnie Regional Commission for a different reason last Thursday, and he was there. As I said, could we just talk for a few minutes about this? So they are writing a draft of the regional land use plan now. It will identify areas for expansion of the village center and the NDA for Putney and other towns. And their intention is to come to towns to talk about the regional land use plan and its implications for town planning. But part of the reason why they're doing this as part of Act 181 was because of the new designation, the renewal of the designation programs, and trying to assist more towns to be involved in it.
Did it overlap with the Act 250 tier 1, 2, 3 stuff?
Yes, it does. So I can't say that I can do chapter and verse on that at this moment, but so they're undertaking that plan. They will have a draft to bring to Putney. They said they could bring it as soon as September. I said, no, that's not a good time. But they thought October or early November could be a good time to bring it to the community. They thought they should bring it to the community through the planning commission, given all the work we're doing on zoning. And I said, I think that's a discussion we need to have with the select board if they want, what role might we have, in facilitating public engagement. The select board would very much like us to do that on their behalf, but I think we need to ask them that versus assume that we would.
Yeah, I do have some concerns that WRC will take it's just the checking boxes and some of the local knowledge, local sentiment may not be available for them to evaluate, et cetera, so that I'd be very curious to see what they come up with. It might just be sort of geographic driven or.
I think it probably largely will be, because they don't have a lot of time to do
Exactly.
the whole county.
Yeah.
But they do want to hear from the community about it. That absolutely is true. And I think they're looking more to us possibly to help them do that. And I said, they already had the zoning engagements. I told them at the community meetings, I gave them our agenda for this meeting and told them, here's the community meeting. So he thought that could be a good time to bring people's attention to it, not trying to do it in them, but that would be a great time to let people know about it. In any case, they won't be done until the end of the year. And then they have to go to the land use review board, the state level, to approve their regional land use plan. So they hope to be done by February, by the end of February, by March. That would be a reasonable timeframe because they plan to be done by the end of December. And there's other regional land use plans going to the LURB this fall. So they won't be a first goer. There'll already be some decisions made that could be helpful to wherever the regional lands and what they propose. But in any case, we can build on it. So when they're done in the LURB, sort of put their stamp on it, and that is a useful tool to take into the comprehensive village plan for the aspect of how to expand the village and the NDA in the future, which was one of the things we wanted to look at.
Mhm.
And then we'll be done. So the timing would be to have a consultant on board to begin in March, a March kickoff with the advisory committee, except that we would convene the advisory committee before that to review the RFP as we did before. And then there's a long pause until the consultant is on board. So the idea is an advisory committee formation starting soon. I guess we can't really literally approve something tonight. But we can suggest what we think about the nomination approach that Vanessa has mapped out, which will look familiar, and the FAQs that, and I gave her a few comments on it. But it would be good to just review this with you, and the timing would be to begin to get the word out. You know, August is not the biggest month, but when people come back in February and October, what are you thinking about the date for nominations? Did we?
We put due by October 15th.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So.
that would give us time to invite people to a meeting
Well,
in December.
yeah,
I think the question is how and when to fit in that meeting, you know, with the advisory committee. When I look at our meeting schedule, you know, we're gonna be really
doubled up
busy.
in meetings.
Is that?
We're doubled up in meetings for the months of September, October.
Yeah, and that's it.
Yeah.
And November 4th is, you know, our meeting to really land on what we
Yeah.
want. So that's gonna be a big meeting, so we need to devote that to zoning. So the December 2nd meeting, or December 3rd, whatever, the date is, in December, we could have an advisory committee formation. I wouldn't do it at that meeting. I mean, that first meeting in December, we are going to approve zoning bylaw subdivision for hearing. That's the intent. So we should make our first meeting in December just about that.
So
And then
I wonder, because we're in a position where this is our August meeting, we can't approve this draft.
Right,
If we wait till our next meeting to approve the draft,
yeah,
that leaves only 1 month for nominations, right? That would be our September meeting.
yeah, we could make it a little
And
longer.
being that we can't convene this advisory
Till
committee
December.
until December, maybe we give ourselves extra time.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
That's why I'm not mapping it out. I just
Yeah.
feel like we need to do the zoning justice and get that done. And then, but if we could convene a meeting in December, it'd be another meeting, but it'd be a short one just to kick it off to the RFP, and then we can get that going.
Are there any constraints on the grant? Have you got like 2 years?
We have plenty of time. Yeah.
When do you think would be an appropriate due date for nominations then?
Well, it would be,
Because
I
we
mean,
want to screen nominations as a.
yes,
Yeah.
we want to go through that.
Early November would provide 2 solid months, right? If we have a September meeting,
Yeah,
if we manage to approve this draft for a September meeting, it'd be most of the month of September and then the month of October. So it could be like end of October,
Like November 1st.
early November, yeah.
yeah, I mean, and then we could provide a report at our November 4th meeting of how many nominations we received.
Mhm.
And, you know, we could potentially take time to suggest a cohort, you know, group to be the advisory committee. And if we have some gaps, which we'll be tracking, you know, across it, Vanessa, right? You know, to just see, are there perspectives we just don't have on board? And I certainly want to recommend that we reach out to the people who provided letters of support
Yeah.
for the grant. The Brattleboro Development Credit Corporation did, the Landmark College did, Governor Putney, there were a number of entities
Right.
that signed on. So I think in writing the criteria, I tried to have them in mind. I didn't name them as entities, or we didn't, but their perspectives you can see in the list of like local and regional economic development organizations. So, yeah, so I think the idea of having them due in late October so that they could be presented as a recommendation at the November 4th meeting would then allow us to fill any gaps that we need to and reach out and confirm people and set our date in December that we're going to do this special meeting just for this purpose. And then that gets us set on that, and then we can just finish up the zoning while we're doing the RFP solicitation. And then we could be ready to go in March, I hope. Mhm. Mary, any thoughts from you?
I agree that we should push nominations ideally to be early November.
Yeah. So we can talk about it at the November 4th meeting. Yeah. So, but before, we need to have it before the 4th so that we can.
And does the planning, just so I understand the process, does the planning commission need to approve the committee or issue a formal invitation to be part of the committee for people that are nominated?
We do. I mean, I think we mostly everybody who nominated themselves, we did take on, but we didn't do it. We did review it before we.
Yeah, I mean, specific to that, when you said the opportunity to sort of vet the responses,
Mhm.
that hope that you get your 12 to 13 responses,
Right.
and there may be some, whose voices you've heard lots of and who are loud, but nevertheless, probably would be interested in participating. So I think that,
You're gonna hear their voices loud at some point. So
Yeah,
it might as
yeah.
well be on an advisory.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't think you would be that critical, have the opportunity to be that critical. I'm
Sure.
thankful that there's interested citizens wanting to give you their time.
I think it's mostly about looking at the candidates and identifying gaps, as Sue said, so to see if we need any further outreach.
That's typical.
Yeah, it'd be great to start checking off some of these boxes. It's just really challenging to find, individuals that.
And so I think put together a little memo for the select board as well as putting that included more timeline information.
Oh, okay,
about
what's that?
Process information about, how are we going to seek nominations? And so part of that was reaching out to all the folks that provided letters of support for the grant, in addition to the normal places, I guess,
Mhm.
wherever we post them.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
as well as a timeline.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's review that.
This is a nice thorough
Yeah.
intro to the project. It's well written here. Is this AI's work?
Well,
Thanks,
I
Beth.
mean,
Thank you.
I'm teasing.
There's I'm not very good at typos, but there is one at the very start of the second page.
on which one?
This?
That's, yeah,
This,
that was Sue.
Yeah.
yeah.
One question.
AI makes a lot of mistakes, but it doesn't make mistakes like that. So you should continue including
Yeah.
small mistakes like that.
No.
Then we know it's written by a person.
One question that I did have about the changes that you made here, Sue, is
Yeah.
I like the rationale.
Mhm.
It's very housing focused. And my understanding about the comprehensive village plan, correct me if I'm wrong, that there's also an economic development.
That's right.
Portion to it,
Mhm.
and I don't see that really talked about in this,
Hmm.
in this info piece.
Yeah, what we're missing is there's several action items.
Mhm.
And we probably should come back, the economic development chapter 5 that actually you cited. It's interesting.
And there's a balance between, giving all of the information and keeping it readable and succinct too. Like I was definitely
Right.
struggling to keep it on the 2 pages.
Right, and I was just trying to come up with the 2 different documents we were pulling from the town plan and
Mhm.
the needs assessment that was done subsequently.
Well,
Yeah,
I think you gotta get it straight in your mind, what spin you expect your consultant to take, because I think they're pretty different worlds, don't you think so?
no, I actually don't. I think as we're looking at what's going to be in a village center, thinking about where housing and the types of housing that can go there. But I think balancing that with just spaces for, commercial service, what makes a village, walkable and attractive, So I do think it's economic development as well as housing that we're looking at. It's both. and the charrette will be asking those questions in addition to where should there be walkways, where should there be bikeways, where should there be, what else should be in the downtown, where should sitting places be? So
Yeah, I
I
mean,
think all that.
Action 5.2 captures that broad scope of,
Mhm.
it includes housing, but it
Mhm.
also has recreation, green
Right.
space,
Doesn't talk
parking.
about economic.
But the second one, but then the Crumpet Village Plan under the second one says to guide infill and redevelopment of Putney's Village Center for economic revitalization and increased housing aligned, so. There's just a lot from the town plan we could cite, so. But your point's well taken that economic development doesn't jump off the page, particularly in the beginning. So we could think about that.
It's there. It's funny when I skim, I'm sort of looking at one thing, thinking
Yeah.
about geographic stuff and the expansion of the infrastructure, but there it is. I mean, economic revitalization, increased housing. So maybe it's fun. And
Yeah.
if consultants can do all that, awesome.
Yeah, well, they won't have to identify with it.
There is some, it's good that parking is there because there's some magic solution to all of that stuff. The parking in the village center is dreadful. It impacts business. It has for a long time. There seems to be a move toward residential use instead of commercial uses in town, which then changes the whole sort of feel of it and becomes less vital, sort of more residential and private. So,
Turn the paper plan into a parking garage.
Good idea.
one
It could be one of the many uses of it. Once we figure out what to do with that nasty contaminated soil.
Doesn't matter, you're putting a parking lot on it.
You put it at exit one.
There
You
you
know,
go.
that's what all that soil is at exit one. Jim Schweitzer, former shop owner, was an environmental consultant. All the soil at exit
Yeah,
one. that's
all that.
Covered by the
Yeah, the big piles.
vaporizing, plastic film.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
all contaminated soil. And the strategy is to just let
From
the
where?
sunlight do its thing. And if you cover it, that's a little bit better because there's less leaching. But that's the approach for much of that petroleum contaminated soil, is it just gets piled up somewhere. And in this
Let
case,
it-
it's
let
very
it
much in
evaporate.
view, which is curious. Yeah. It just sits
Wow.
there for, years. And yeah, it's a very curious thing.
I was curious about that pile of soil.
I was too.
Yeah,
I'm
I
excited.
presumed that it was from some other DOT project.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The DOT was like staging it there for some other DOT.
Yeah.
project.
Yeah.
It's really surprising.
And I always thought to
low
myself,
impact,
like,
response with the microbes. Yeah.
Maybe plant sunflowers on it.
yeah, I thought the plastic tarping was to potentially reduce the spread of invasive plants as they move dirt from Magic DOT project to Magic DOT project.
Magic.
All right, well, I think we have a next step is to come something ready for the board, for the commission to approve.
Yeah, so maybe
Um,
some tweaking of this. a little
Tweak it,
bit.
and then your distribution
And
plan, sorry for that.
The distribution plan, which I'll resend that to you.
Yeah.
And then be set to approve the process.
Yeah.
in September.
That would be great.
Great.
So we'll move
It's
that.
wonderful to see you doing this stuff. It's really impressive. And I think that Sue's process is a good one, that, what
Yes.
that's developed with the town plan and, repeated has been very positive. And the idea that the actions of the planning commission just reflect that of a much wider part of the community is very positive.
Well, there'll be a lot of outreach to do to the community, so having a committee will also help us reach people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really important.
Yeah.
So, great, thank you, Vanessa, really nice to have you leading this. So the only last thing, I know it's 8:35, we went over a little bit with Anon, but I just want to do a little process check-in. Is there, well, anything else in comprehensive village plan? Did we cover anything you would want to talk about, Vanessa? Well said. Didn't cut you off. Nope. So on the zoning bylaw project, we have a schedule, we have the colorful handout, we can get, we're hitting, sort of crunch time in the sense of really diving deep into reviewing everything and coming up with it. So I did extend the date to the 18th of August because I had trouble getting documents out. Now, I'll just say that I spent more hours than I will even dare to tell you, trying to get the documents redlined and out to everybody. And believe it or not, when I went to go print redlined versions, they did not come out with redlining, even though I see it on the computer.
Yeah.
And I went and pounded sand. I was like, I can't believe this is not working. So I'm not done yet.
This is in Microsoft Word.
Yes, I have to do, what I need to do is go and look at, I only tried to print it at the town. I didn't want to use my little printer at home, but my little printer at home turns out to be a really good printer. And
I mean, I would say just pick one. What happens if you export it to different formats?
the PDF really doesn't work. I lose the redlining.
Yeah.
So that doesn't work. So I think what I have to do is just do it in a Word format. And I had formatted. I went through and took out all the chatty comments and just left the comments that said needs legal review or things like that. Because it's been publicly posted and it just didn't look like
Yeah.
good, everybody had that in prior versions. We didn't need to do that again.
Yeah. I'm just wondering when in Microsoft, maybe somebody knows this, when you go to print, I wonder if there's an option within the print dialog that allows you, like, by default, it is not printing with comments turned on, but maybe there's an option within the print dialog.
Well, I actually went and made two completely different documents. One with all the changes saved. Actually, I already had that from Wyndham Regional. So
Yeah.
and then the other one was track changes.
Right.
And what I did is I took out all of the formatting things, which are just very distracting.
Yeah.
I found out how you could just delete all those as a group. That was fun to find out. I did
Yeah.
that. Yeah, it was very clever.
Yeah.
But when I went to try to print it with redlining here, I came home and I pulled them up and I went, there's no red.
You should see if you can find a word.
I'm gonna
Word.
figure it out. I had to get ready for this meeting and do.
Because I know,
the
for
focus
example,
group.
like
Do it.
with the mapping software, if I haven't, it won't display or export anything that is not a saved change. That's how the program is
Yeah.
set up.
Yeah.
So you can't export something that has work in progress.
Yeah, no, this is all
So I'm
saved.
wondering, but I'm just wondering if Microsoft has
So, yeah,
a feature within it that purposely doesn't print
the red.
the track
Right, there's
change.
something to
Right?
turn on.
Like there.
There's something to turn on or off. It's like,
Right,
no,
right,
I want to show
Yeah.
track changes.
And I just ran out of time
Yeah.
to do it because I had to do the focus group
Yeah.
and, it was just like too many things at once.
Yeah.
And the rest of my life.
So
Right.
I brought this up before. There still are some changes that need to be discussed.
Yes, there are.
Bigger group and, to note them, they're not going to be discussed by the 18th. So, that document will be a work in progress
Yes.
and will need to be discussed and refined.
It will not be a full draft.
But that will only be 1% of, or 0.5% of the whole document. So great, most of it is unchanged. So, that's good. But just to clarify that.
Well, there are a number of issues that need a deeper discussion, Pip. I think that's what you're trying to say, right? And the question is, how and when are we going to do those? And I think it would be the September meeting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
I
so
think
Mike
that's
is-
kind of
Mike is
it.
sort of up on that, and he and I discussed it briefly. So yeah.
Yeah, because what I've asked them to do is to take the comments they receive and be prepared to present them for discussion at the meeting in September. That's their job. And we can help them be prepared for that. It's not like they can't talk to us about it. But then we can tell them on the 2nd between us and the advisory committee what we want them to do. And then they're gonna publish it the 11th of September as another review draft, but it's gonna call the public review draft beside versus the PC review draft, okay? And that's what we'll have out for the community meetings. And I will ask Wyndham Regional Commission to please create a presentation that identifies what the changes are, because it's not enough just to hand people a red line document. That's just not gonna do it. I'm frankly disappointed because I did ask them to create the presentation to accompany this draft road review, and they said, oh, we didn't understand that.
Hmm.
And I think they didn't.
For the whole. For the whole.
Right.
For the whole update, I wanted them to provide a presentation. Like,
Yeah.
building from what they did in the meetings that we
Right,
had in
exactly.
May, June, and July. It needed a little crisper presentation.
Yes,
Um,
yeah, absolutely.
but I asked, that's why it's working on that to create something.
Yeah.
And they didn't. I want them, I'm gonna ask them to present that as best they can for the September meeting.
Mhm.
But by September 11th, when this is going out, being posted to the public as a draft, we need something that explains it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've made that clear. We'll make that clear again. But yeah, there's a lot of issues and it may be a lot to talk about in one meeting. And I don't think there's a whole lot more we can do other than the things we just said that is approved. We won't take on the enhanced energy plan if it's a September meeting. No. But the comprehensive village plan advisory committee.
That should be relatively quick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any other comments on process? I just
I
hear
mean, my
from the planning
feeling
commission.
is if you come back with that same exact draft document, I think that should be a 2-minute discussion.
Yeah.
Yes. Say.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right, good.
Anything else on the,
Maybe
on the
fix the
zo-
typos.
on the zoning that anybody want to say? Okay. Pip, do you want to try to have a meeting with Mike McConnell before September 2nd? I suspect we should do that. We get him all the comments, the 18th he has them, I think we should probably give maybe some guidance to him.
Yeah, so why don't you? I'm terrible at thinking about process, especially at this time of night. So if you have some idea about when, when it would happen, I am gonna take a week, Monday through Friday off next week.
Yeah, it'll be after that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm thinking the week, the stuff is due on the 18th.
Which is at the beginning of the.
That's a
third week.
Monday.
Yeah. that's
So I
right.
wonder if we should just meet, later that week.
Yeah, or the last week, sure,
Yeah, or the last week.
yeah.
Give them a whole week. Maybe but you work Mondays, Tuesdays.
Yep.
So
Secret.
I know. I think we probably should meet.
Yeah,
with
you
probably
or deserve a bit of a week off. I know that your retirement schedule is really.
I know he is a very, very full. Pip, I'll get back to you on the date.
Good,
Let's
good.
set up, we should meet with Mike and just make sure that he gets the guidance from us so that the meeting on the 4th is ready.
So as best as you can, planning commission members, give some thought to that reg, and I forget its number, but the one that discusses at length the process to subdivide lots that are more than one zoning district.
Yes.
That gets into the math. I think it's nuts. I was gonna ask Sue Fillion her opinion. I've been asking anybody I know that has planning commission experience what they think about that reg, and I asked the DRB. The general impression from the DRB was, don't really know why we have that reg, and it doesn't seem to benefit the town, so. But it's a big deal, it's a big one,
Yeah.
and in light of the discussion about subdivision in the forest overlay block, it could become controversial.
Okay. Well, I want to thank you all. Is there anything else before we adjourn this meeting other than to note the schedule of meetings that is printed at the bottom? And I probably will give my select board presentation on the 20th of August. I asked about that, so that will be my date. And I will push the housing issue still a little further. I mean, it's not that we need more work, but it's too bad that nothing's moving. So I think that's a concern. All right, thank you all. Meeting is adjourned. And Mary, you and I can maybe talk about minutes. I don't know if you can do anything with these for this meeting. Okay.
Yeah, I should be able to. And I also was looking on how to print the red line version, and it is in the like print settings. So I've PDF'd one version. I mean, it's not super great. It's a lot of redlining, obviously, but it should at least give us something that we can post that is indeed redlined.
Wonderful. Thank you. Appreciate your work on that.
Yeah, and also I obviously was late to the meeting. So I don't have some of the earlier notes. I think I joined around 7:15 or whenever I was let in the room. So